Hey guys, what's going on? This is Atarva here, and this video is all about tRPC. So what exactly tRPC is and how is it beneficial for you, and we are also going to see how to use tRPC in your Next.js application. So to understand what tRPC is fully, we need to first understand what RPC is. So the full form of RPC is remote procedure call. So how does RPC work exactly, and what is it? So RPC is all about a client computer and a host computer. So in simple terms, a client computer sends a list of procedures that a host computer or a server computer needs to follow, and it can be anything like doing certain tasks and doing some stuff, and all of these RPC requests are batched. So it's only one HTTP request going, and all of the tasks are being done in one request. Of course, this can be changed into like multiple requests, but RPC is a general standard for like tRPC. And what does T stand in RPC? It's TypeScript, if you haven't guessed already. So why TypeScript? So why are we including TypeScript here? So it's all because of type safety. And I know type safety is a term that not really a lot of beginners care about, but type safety really matters a lot. Of course, like if you are using a production level application, you will require type safety because you need to exactly know what are the types of the data you are dealing with. In tRPC, what we are dealing with here is like it's like an API call, but you exactly know the response you will get, and they exactly will know what type of data you need to pass in. So in normal API calls, you don't really have the information like what data are you trying to send to the server and what data you will get. And we will just take an example of both tRPC and with just normal API calls to understand what I am telling you about. So let's go ahead and look at some code samples. So this is an app that doesn't use tRPC and use normal API calls, and this is a Next.js app. So if you look at the hello.ts file that Next.js prepares us for us, you will find that we are returning a response of JSON, which is an object which contains a name which is of type string. And when we call this API call somewhere, for example, I just created a use effect and I just ran a function which fetches that route, and we convert it to JSON and we get the data. But as you see, the data is of the type any, and we don't really know what we have gotten as a response. So if it was an error, we don't really know unless we check, and we have no way to like understand what is the type of data unless we go back to this file and check, or unless if you have a separate team of backend, you check with them to get what the data is getting, or you need to just like make an API request manually and try to do that. So it's a lot of trial and error, and a lot of times bugs usually come out from these steps, using an API call and not knowing what you will get. Because if you proceed on processing the data further, then you will understand that there is some error, and you will just start console logging each and every step, and then you will understand that hey, this is the wrong data I'm getting from the server. So for example, we are getting name, and if you are doing data dot full name, of course if it won't work, but it won't let you know, it will just say undefined, and there will be no error in the editor and anything like that. So you will never know. You will just need to console log it out to check, and tRPC really solves this. So let's go and look at a tRPC example, and it works slightly differently than an API call, so bear with me if you don't really understand anything. And this is a sample tRPC app which we are going to create in this video, by the way, and this is also using Next.js, and instead of API we are using a tRPC. This creates a tRPC server for us, and then we can just create routes and stuff. So let's look at the example route here. So we have this function called as getPerson, and this is a procedure which takes an inputs, and we are using Zord for input validation for like complete type safety, and the client knows exactly what to pass to the server. And this takes an object of first name and a last name with the type of string, and we will get into Zord later. It's a pretty cool package, and we are going to specify what it is. Is it a query or a mutation? We will look at it again while we're building this, and we are just returning the data which we get. And this is, consider this like an API response. It's a response to the RPC request you just made. So if we go back to our index.tsx file, you can see this code I just wrote like a few hours ago. It says trpc.example.getPerson, which matches the name of the function in that file. So what do I mean by the type safety tRPC has to offer? So let's try to do this again. I'll say const. Okay, you know what, I'll just remove this so that we can just start from scratch. So const data is equal to, you know what, I don't even want data, I want autocomplete to complete it for us. So let's do tRPC dot, now it picks up that it's an example router, and now we can do dot, and now it says it detects the get person function, and now we can do use query hook, which by the way, this uses React query under the hood, so we have all those amazing features of React query. And now it tells us what it wants. So it says, okay, input first name and last name. So let's open an object, and now we can just do autocomplete, and it says that first name is required. We can just do John, and we can do last name. I can't type. Perfect. And if I mess something up, it should throw me an error. Let's see. Yep, it throws me an error because a last name is required and we aren't passing it yet. And this is the type safety I'm talking about here. And it does not limit to the request, it also applies to the response. So let's get the data here. So since it's using React query, you can get all of this data about the request if it's loading and stuff, but we want data for this one. We won't be digging into React query in this one. So yeah, now we have this p tag here. Full name is data.fullname. Let's see if we get the same type safety here. So if we do data dot, you will see all the response we are getting. So let's double check with the response we are sending out from the example router. So yeah, this is the response: first name, last name, and the full name. If we go back here, and the response is first name, last name, and full name. And it also shows you what type of it is. It just says that it's string. So yeah, so now we have saved it. We can also try this out. So let me open my browser. Let's go to localhost 3000, which is a full screen. Full name is John Doe. If we go to our console and let's go to the network tab and let's reload this page, you will see that this is an API call which tRPC is making under the hood, and this is an RPC call. And you can also see the response here, and you don't need to manage anything of that. The package does all of this for you. And the most interesting thing about this is that you can batch API calls. So let's go back to our VS Code and let's duplicate this. Let's name it as data2. Let's change the first name here, and let's copy this, and let's change this to data3. Let's change the last name here. And now if we go back to our browser, let's reload this. Now you can see that all of these requests should be batched. So it says example.getPerson exactly 3 times. Yeah, 3 times. That means it batched all these 3 requests and sent it once, and we get response for all of these in one call. And that is some cool stuff. Like, you don't need to worry about limiting your request, and tRPC does that for you automatically. And if you don't want all of these batch requests, you can just disable it. We have the configuration to do that, but I don't believe you necessarily want to disable this unless you know what you're doing. So yeah, let's go back to Visual Studio Code. We don't need this. And now let's go to the part where we set up tRPC in a Next.js application. We will go from start by creating the Next.js application. Then we will install all the tRPC packages, and we will walk through documentation to see how to integrate tRPC in your Next.js application. So this is a new format I'm trying to follow. I'm going to follow the documentation in video, and I'm going to set it up with you as the documentation progresses. Let me know how this idea is, because the reason I'm trying to do this is to motivate all the developers out there to look at the documentation and try to follow the tutorial and get started steps and how to read the documentation properly. So let me know how that is, and if that's not okay for you, I will just stop doing that in the future videos, and we can go back to a previous format of writing all the code ourselves. So yeah, let's go to our terminal. Okay, so let's create our Next.js application. Let's do pnpx. If you want to use npx, that's fine too. If you want to use yarn, that's fine too. Let's do create next app, and I'll just name this tRPC. Let's click enter, and let's wait for the wizard to pop up. Do I want to use TypeScript? Hell yeah, because we are using tRPC. ESLint, yep. Tailwind, nah, we don't need it. SRC, yes. App router, no. Import areas, do you want to change? Nope. Let's just move with this, and let's just wait for this to install, and then we will open our VS Code window, and then we will move towards the documentation and see what we need to do. Shouldn't take a lot of time to install. Yeah, perfect. Now let's go to tRPC, and now let's do code dot. Yep, I trust myself. And now we have all our things here. app.tsx, we have this, we have API, we have hello.ts, and let's go to the documentation now. This is the tRPC documentation. I will link this in the description if you want to check it out, or you can just Google. I want you all to have this habit of Googling. Just go to Google and search for tRPC Next.js documentation, and you should be redirected to this page. Just ensure that the version is 10.x. So yeah, let's see what they have to say. So this is the recommended folder structure. We aren't using Prisma, but we are going to make a Prisma tutorial soon, so subscribe to this channel if you want to watch that tutorial soon. I know that was a shameless plug, but I apologize for that. Okay, anyways, so we have this API folder in which we have a tRPC route and this file, which is a catch all file. So basically all requests going to this handle will be cached by this file. And then we have the server folder, which will have the routers and the context and tRPC.ts. Context we haven't covered in the example app, and we'll see if we want to do that just yet. So yeah, let's just go down, add tRPC to extend existing Next.js project. We have an existing Next.js project. We are using pnpm, so let's just click this. We have to install these packages, so tRPC server, client, React query, next, tanstack React query, and Zod. So let's just copy this command. Let's go back to our terminal. Let's just paste this command, and let's install this. Let's just yeah, now let's do pnpm.pmt.dev, and this should start the server, and we don't need to worry about things not working because I forgot to start the server. Okay, now let's see the next step. So enable strict mode in the tsconfig.json. Let's go here. Strict mode, can you yeah, strict is true. Perfect. Let's go back here. We don't need to do this one. Create a tRPC router, and this is a sample backend. Just if you're wondering why am I breezing through documentation so fast, because I have already read this and it's already being fast reading in my mind, but typically it takes time to read documentation and it's pretty normal. So yeah, so first of all, this is the file we have to create. So I won't be copying the code just yet. I will be still typing the code, but we are just looking at the documentation. So let's just go here and let's create a new folder called server in src directory, and we are going to create a file called tRPC.ts. We are also going to have a new folder called routers, which we are not going to touch until we are asked to. So let's do const t is equal to init tRPC dot create. So we are creating our first tRPC handler, and this is the only one we will ever need in our Next.js application. Now let's export some useful stuff. So export const router is equal to t dot router, export const procedure is equal to t dot procedure. So whenever we want to use router, we can directly import this function into the file we want to create the routers. Typically it will be in the routers folder, and if you want to create a procedure within a router, we'll just import the procedure. I think it's an object or something like that. So yeah, we'll just import that. So we are done with this file. Let's save this. Now let's go back here and see what we have to do. So we have to create the first router, which is the app router, which is the root router, and they have all of their procedures in the app router, which is not recommended. We can just nest it and we can have multiple files, and we will do that. But first of all, let's just do this, and then we will see how to branch it and have it in different files. So yeah, so this is importing Zod, and then we have a router that has a hello procedure which takes an object with the string, and then we return a greeting with that same thing, and then we are exporting the type. So let's try to do this ourselves. So let's go to the routers folder and let's do app.ts. By the way, all of these folders and stuff, all of this organization is recommended by the tRPC docs. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to follow that. So if you want to have some different kind of structure, feel free to do that. It will be the best thing. So now let's import Zod, because for some reason my VS Code doesn't like to auto import it. So import z from Zod, and now let's create an app router. App router is equal to router. Let's auto import it, and I'm pretty sure I can just do this. And the we have to have the procedures here. So we'll have the first hello procedure here. Okay, hold on. Let's not try to copy them blindly. Let's have our get name function we had previously. So let's create a get name function, and this will be a procedure which will have an input of an object. So we want the first name and the last name, so we will take it as a form of object. So z.object. So what Zod exactly is doing here is like it's enforcing that, hey, we need this input. If you are not using Zod, you will need to check types of all the inputs you have received, and then you need to have bunch of if statements and stuff, and Zod just makes it easier for input validation. So yeah, so z.object, and we are going to have an object with first name, which is going to be z.string, and last name z.string. And this is typically what will be recommended in your VS Code thing, so in your autocomplete, so it will be very good for you. So now we want this to be a query, because we are not using any database and something. We are not mutating data, we are just getting data. You can even use mutate if you want to. If you are like pushing to a database or you're logging to console or something like that, mutate makes sense. And if you're familiar with React query, it moves hand in hand, and your mutation will give you proper functions to deal with mutation. So yeah, and this will be a query. It will have opts, which are options, and this is going to be a function, and we are going to be using opts here. So we are going to return, let's just return the full name, not anything else. Full name, and this is going to be a string with opts dot input dot first name and a space, and then we are going to do opts dot input dot last name. I think this should be fine, and we are going to export it, of course. I cannot type. Now we are going to do export type app router is equal to type of app router. Perfect. And now let's see the next steps here. So the next step is creating an handler. So this is going to be the only time you are going to touch the API folder, and we are going to have all of the things. We are going to forward all the requests to our tRPC server, and this is the main entry point for all the all the RPC requests. So let's go and delete this hello.ts file. We don't need it. Let's go and create a new tRPC folder, and within tRPC we are going to create a catch-all tRPC file, and I am pretty sure we need to import star as tRPC next from at tRPC server /adapter/next. So if you just look at here, there is a lot of adapters if you want to use it. Even you can even use WebSockets if you want to, and there are a lot of different stuff, but we are going to use next. And yep, and let's look at what we have to do. We are going to create an API handler. So basically this is going to route all of our RPC requests to app router, and it's going to do all its things. So let's create a Next.js API handler using this. So export default tRPC next dot create next API handler, and we are going to have the router as app router. And what else do we need here? Create context. So what create context is used for, let's go back here. So this is an empty function here, but technically what it's for is like if there is some data you want to pass on, like some kind of token and stuff, you can do it right here. But we are not going to pass anything, so we don't need to do this. So this is going to be an empty function, yeah, which returns an empty object. Perfect. You can like pass authentication states and stuff, and then you will be able to access it in your routers, and it's pretty useful feature, but we don't need to really touch this right now. So I guess that's our API. I think our server is ready pretty much. Now we need to set up the client. Yep, I am right. So we need to set up the tRPC client. Now we have set up the server. Now we need to set up the front end side. So let's do that. We will copy this function though, because we need the base URI, and what this function basically does, it's like it's trying to get the base URI of the website you are on. So for example, if it's a browser, we don't really need a base URI, and we can relatively call the API routes. But if it's a server, then we need to get the URLs and stuff, and for different providers it's going to be different. For Vercel it's Vercel URL and stuff, but if it's just a browser, we don't need to do anything else. So yeah, let's just get this function, copy this. Now let's go here. We are going to create a new utils folder in the root. So utils tRPC, and this is all client side. So if you're wondering what about all the server stuff we are doing and client stuff we're doing, server stuff is honestly over. We are just working on the client side. Now we need to write the configuration. So they have done create tRPC next, and it's imported from tRPC next, the package we installed, and specifically for Next.js. And we are also casting it with app router, so we have all the type safety. So export const it's tRPC, right? So we can just do tRPC, or you can name it anything you want to, and tRPC next, create tRPC next, I think should work. Yeah, I think that was the name, right? Yep. And we need to cast it with the type. So app router, And now we need to have some configuration here, and this is a function which have opts and it returns the configuration. And that's because if you want to do some computation before like having the configuration, you can do that. And we have the links, and this is where you link your RPC URL. And there are many types of link, like if you want to have a WebSocket link, and if you want to have a normal HTTP link, you can do that. And there is also some different links, like a logger link that logs every request made to the console. So each link you mention gets to have access to the RPC request you make through the Next.js application. It's pretty amazing. But there's something called like your last link must end with an HTTP, or let's reframe it in another way. You can't have any other links under HTTP, so it must be above HTTP. So HTTP is supposed to be an ending link, if that makes any sense. So how do we create an HTTP link? So HTTP batch link, so tRPC from tRPC client. And what do I need to pass here? So we need to pass opts. So the URL is get base URL, I guess so. So HTTPS, oh I think so we can just do, oh yeah, we don't need HTTPS, we can just do get base URL /API /tRPC. Yeah, I think this should work. And we are also going to add logger links so that we can get logs in the console whenever a request is made. Typically you want to limit this to only development environments and not in production, so that when you are debugging you exactly know what's happening, and in production it's never visible. But we are not going to touch that. So our client is made. Now let's look at the next step. The next step is adding with tRPC to, like, we are basically wrapping a provider around our entire app technically with this function, so that our app can use tRPC. So this is again the client. So let's go to this file, and we are going to cut the export default here, and we're going to paste this, and tRPC dot with, I need to import tRPC dot with tRPC, and we're going to pass app. Perfect. And now we are just going to make an API request just like we did in the demo. So the client is set up. Now we can just go and create API requests. So let's just get rid of everything under main. I just want this to be non-cluttered for once. And now we can do const, let's open an object, is equal to tRPC dot get name. So we have the get name function here, and I know why you are wondering that why haven't we done dot example this time, and we'll get to it. But let's just try to do something, use query, and we are going to pass in the first name as John Doe, yeah, and we are going to get the data, and then we are going to do data. If it's undefined, then if it's defined, then I want to have the data, I guess, or else loading. Okay, yeah, oh yeah, that's an object, and that's the beauty of tRPC. You know, like I typed something wrong and it's showing me that an object cannot be assigned to a React node, and that's what I like about tRPC. If this was a normal fetch request, it would have been disastrous and you wouldn't even know. So yeah, so we can just do data dot full name, and I think this should work unless we have messed up. So let's go to a browser, let's go to localhost 3000. It had loading first and now it's John Doe. So let's open the DevTools and let's reload. and we have this get name thing, and it's querying, and we are getting the full name response back. And again, if we stack everything up, and we'll get a lot of responses. It will be bashed into one request. And yep, this is the basics of tRPC, basic setup of tRPC. Oh yeah, you should also see all of these requests made in the console. If we reload this page, the logger link which we used is logging out the request we made and the response we got whenever we get a response. And this is just awesome. Like, it just clearly stands out as a request made to tRPC, and between all of the millions of console logs you have in your application, this is going to stand out, and it's really going to tell which method you called and what response you got, and in the form of the result, and it gives us the context and stuff, and it also gives us the result, the data and stuff. It's just super useful to debug. So instead of like individually console logging each request, and if they are faulty, you can just add the logger link, and if there's a faulty request, it's already in your console, so you don't need to worry about anything else. Now let's make the example thing, and let's get this get name function to an example route, because like if you see the app.ts, the app router is just messy. If we have all of this function here, we can just split it and have different routers and just add those routers here. So let's cut this from here, and yeah, now as soon as I cut it, you see that we already get error in our index.js file that it says that this basically doesn't exist. Why are we even calling it? And I just love it. I cannot just stop appreciating it. So yeah, let's go to routers and let's create a new file. We are going to call it example.ts, and now we are going to follow the same steps. So we are going to do export const example router, and this is going to be a router, and we are just going to paste this thing, and we are going to import the procedure. Let's try to import Zord. Oh yeah, I can now. Perfect. And we are also going to export type example router, type of example router, but this should be in capital E. Perfect. And now if we go to our index.tsx, we will just remove this for now, and if we do dot, we should be able to get okay. Oh yeah, that's because if we go to our app.ts router, we need to add this here. So we are going to do example, and we're going to add example router here. Perfect. And now we can just access it from here. So we can just do trpc.example.getName.useQuery. Perfect. Now you can simply have different things. So if you have a tRPC router for payments, you can do trpc.payments. If you have something for authentication, you can do trpc.auth. If you have something like profile data or something like post, trpc.post, trpc.profile. There are unlimited possibilities you can do with tRPC, and managing things in routers like this is just simply good. And if you want to like have different, like if this is even being clutter for you, you can just create a new folder for procedures and just simply put all your procedures this, and put like just mention those, like just import all of these procedures to make this file a little clean. So this is about how you can just clean your routers up. Okay, so few minutes ago I talked about context and how you can pass in data to your tRPC procedures, and we are going to now set up a context that basically passes the request and response variables from the Next.js API endpoint, so just in case if you need to access it to get some data like cookies and stuff, and if you want direct access to the REST object for whatever reason, you might not need it, but if you want to, just wanted to showcase and show you how to do that just in case. So let's go to our trpc.ts. Hold on, we have the function of create context here, so we are just going to remove it. You know what, we are just going to leave it with the name, because we are going to create a new function here. So export const create context, and this is going to be okay, hold on. So we are going to have the opts, or we are going to have the options here. So let's have opts, and they are going to have the type of next opts or something like that. Create next context options, and I messed up, I guess so. And yep, and now we're going to return an object which is going to have a request variable, which is going to be opts.rec, and res should be opts.res, and this should be enough to give you the request and response variables into your example or anywhere you want to. But the problem is that you cannot just access it yet. So if you just do opts dot context dots, and if you see, you cannot just look at your code auto code completion. So let's just remove this and let's go back to our I guess so it's tRPC.ts. Now we need to add the typings here, so, and we need to let them know that hey, we are using this context. So context creator, now we are going to use context, and we are going to have this function here, and we are not going to touch it, but let's give it, we need to cast it to the type of the function. So the function is returning the hold on, I'm switching files so many times, I'm losing track of each file. So okay, it was in this file, yeah. So we are returning the request and response variables, and we need to tell that hey, this is the context is going to be request and response variables. So we're just going to do type of create context, and we're going to import it from the API file. And now if you go to example.ts, and you should be able to do console.log ctx dot it's ops dot context dot request. And now let's just save this, and let's just go back and let's reload. And now in our console we should see the request variable being console logged out. So basically this is the Next.js request variable which we have been passing on through the context, and this is very useful in the cases where you want to directly access the token store in the cookies and stuff, and I see a lot of use case for this. So we're just going to remove the console log, and we're just going to let the context be. But typically what you want to do is like not pass these indirectly, instead of just pass the data you deem is necessary. But there's no problem in doing this, but people from the examples I saw online, people don't usually do this. So yeah, that's it for this video. Hope you guys liked this video and enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any other requests for any other tutorials, please leave them in the comments below so that I can make it. In this video we saw how you can use tRPC, what is tRPC, and how is it beneficial for you. I probably said that in the wrong order, but you get what I'm trying to say. Also, yeah, I had stopped uploading for a long time, and I am back, and it's the same story again. It's just a problem that I cannot manage my time, and sometimes it just takes a lot of time to create technical tutorials, and I hope you guys understand. And I'm trying my best to bring tutorials to you guys, and if you want to support me throughout this process, the best option is to subscribe to this channel, and it would really help a lot. And I hope that YouTube algorithm promotes my video a lot more, and I really want to provide value to all the people who are interested in web dev. So yeah, if you like this video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, all that usual stuff. I'm just saying that again. I don't know what's happening to me, it's like 5 AM right now. So yeah, anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.